Now I'd like to offer the floor to the distinguished representative of Ecuador, speaking on behalf of his country, Argentina, and Bolivia.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much, Co-Chairman. For me, it's an honor to speak on behalf of Argentina, Bolivia, and Ecuador, and at the same time associate myself with the statement given by Fiji on behalf of the G77 in China. We do acknowledge that in designing the SDGs, it's important to maintain a holistic approach towards urban development and human settlements, and that includes affordable housing and improving urban settings on the basis of integrating environmental aspects and into land planning with a view to improving the living conditions in society. And these are the aspects that should be the focus of our new goals, objectives, and indicators. We hope that the post-2015 development agenda will help to overcome the inequities and will take into account the realities, the different realities, to work on goals and objectives which are directed towards implementing broad housing policies and multi-sectoral policies, which would include a sustainable environment, such as access to drinking water, to sanitation, both in urban areas as well as rural areas, energy, redeveloping suburbs through the generation of green corridors and the development or the participation of local authorities in urban planning. And in this respect, we highlight the central role that is played by the state as a coordinator of social and environmental policies. We believe as well that the SDGs must help to reduce the vulnerability of large human settlements. And hence, we have to have assessments which would make it possible to have the prevention and appropriate response to natural disasters. And specifically, we believe it's important to have SDGs that would help to promote the elimination of barriers which the most vulnerable people face in cities. And I'm talking about persons with disabilities. It's not possible that we can think about sustainable cities without first talking about accessibility for all. Cities are engines of economic growth and innovation, and as such, they are a necessary condition for sustainable development at the global level. Nonetheless, for cities to contribute to eradicating poverty, they must first provide a better access to decent labor, adequate social protection, as well as the promotion of healthy networks which would encourage social inclusion. At the present time, Latin America has a level of urbanization which is more than 75%, close to that of all of the most developed regions. In 2025, their levels will be equal to those of other most developed areas. And we welcome the holding of the 7th Global Forum in Medellin, Colombia, next April. And in my national capacity, Ecuador would offer its offer to be the headquarters of Habitat 3, and this has been accepted by the General Assembly of the United Nations. Sir, we understand that sustainable transportation plays an important role because it contributes to an efficient use of energy and a better quality of life for citizens, promoting social inclusion and providing for a better urban structure, which also intensifies economic development, health and productivity in rural areas. In general terms, Argentina, Bolivia, and Ecuador, we reiterate that means of implementation are crucial to ensure that the SDGs lead to concrete results, respecting the principles of common but shared responsibility. Now, As we've mentioned on previous occasions, there is an enormous gap when it comes to investment in infrastructure, education, health, services, and standards of living in other countries. Almost $1.3 trillion are necessary to invest annually in urban infrastructure, in housing, transportation, and services, in order to satisfy the material needs of people who migrate to cities, both in developing as well as less developed countries. In order to satisfy these requirements, we need to have a continuous and sustainable flow of resources, such as ODA, technology transfer from developed countries to developing countries. And these means of implementation should be committed with the ultimate aim of eradicating poverty. We do share the idea that capacity building and the exchange of knowledge and technology will be fundamental pillars in the transition towards sustainable transportation. And nonetheless, the actions must go beyond a mere exchange, and they must include technology transfer as well as financial resources towards developing countries, as well as the dissemination of related technological knowledge. And we must also seek a balance between the protection of intellectual property rights and the promotion of and dissemination of technology to create mutual benefits for the producers as well as for the users. Furthermore, and with respect to the establishment of standards to measure air pollution in large urban centers, mostly caused by vehicle emissions, that these standards should not lead to binding standards which would be applied in an indiscriminate manner in countries, but they should take into account the specific circumstances as well as the different abilities of states. And lastly, with respect to improving services, this is something that's directly related to international trade. In this respect, any measure which would aim to improve energy efficiency and to reduce emissions at the international level must be consistent with the principles and forecasts of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, without overlooking the cost of international transportation, and we shouldn't undermine this sector. If this were the case, developing countries were the ones that would be most harmed, especially if we bear in mind that trade is a tool to eradicate poverty, and so as well as a tool for the socio-economic development of those countries. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
I thank the distinguished representative of Ecuador for his statement.